I'm 40. He had another wedding while we were married. I'm 40 years old now. And if you had told me 5 years ago that I'd be sitting here, telling this story, I would have laughed in your face. Because 5 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I thought I knew exactly who I married. I thought I knew what love looked like. I was wrong about everything. My story starts like a lot of love stories do, with hope. I came from a good family. The kind where Sunday dinners mattered and everyone showed up. My parents had been married for 35 years. I grew up believing in forever. I grew up thinking that if you loved someone hard enough, if you were loyal enough, kind enough, patient enough, it would work out. That's what I saw modeled my whole life. So when I met him at 29, it felt like fate. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. We met at a friend's barbecue, and he made me laugh within the first 5 minutes. He asked thoughtful questions. He remembered little things I mentioned in passing. He seemed genuinely interested in who I was, not just what I looked like or what I could offer him. We dated for 4 years before he proposed, and I said yes without hesitation. Those 4 years were good. We traveled together, explored new restaurants, had inside jokes that made us laugh until we cried. We talked about our future, the house we'd buy, the kids we'd have, the life we'd build. And I believed every word he said, because why wouldn't I? This was the man I loved, the man who loved me back. Our wedding was beautiful. Small, intimate, just family and close friends. I remember standing there in my dress, looking at him, thinking I was the luckiest woman alive. My mom cried. His parents toasted to our future. Everything felt perfect, like the beginning of something real and lasting. The first few years were exactly what I dreamed of. We traveled, we laughed, we built a life together. We bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood. We adopted a dog. We had routines, Sunday morning pancakes, Friday movie nights, seasonal trips to visit family. It was ordinary in the best way possible. Stable, secure, safe. And then, 3 years ago, we had our son. Becoming a mother changed everything for me. Suddenly, I wasn't just living for myself anymore. I had this tiny human depending on me, trusting me. Every decision I made mattered more. Every moment felt weighted with responsibility and love and terror all mixed together. My husband seemed happy too. He'd hold our baby boy, look at me, and smile. Those moments felt sacred. Real, like we'd created something beautiful together. I should have known better than to trust moments. The changes started slowly, so slowly that I didn't even notice at first. He started working later. Coming home after our son was already asleep. He'd say it was a big project, a demanding client, something that required extra hours. And I believed him, because why wouldn't I? This was my husband. The father of my child. The man I'd chosen to spend my life with. The man who'd held my hand in the delivery room and cried when our son was born. But then came the phone. He'd always been on his phone, sure, but this was different. He became protective of it. Possessive even. He'd take it with him everywhere. To the bathroom, to the kitchen for a glass of water. Even just to move from one room to another. And at night, after I'd gone to bed, I'd wake up sometimes and see the blue light of his screen illuminating his face in the darkness. 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, just scrolling, typing, his face unreadable in that cold blue glow. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd say it was work. Always work. Always some urgent email or project deadline or client crisis that couldn't wait until morning. I started noticing the WhatsApp notifications. The way his screen would light up constantly, and he'd angle it away from me before I could see the name. The way he'd set his phone face, down on the table during dinner, something he'd never done before. The way he'd excuse himself to take calls in the other room, closing the door behind him. Little things, stupid things that probably meant nothing. Except they meant everything. I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, that motherhood had made me anxious and suspicious. That the sleepless nights and constant worry about our son had broken something in my brain that made me see threats where there were none. I'd look at our son playing on the living room floor and think, we're a family. He wouldn't risk this. But that voice in the back of my head, that instinct that women are taught to ignore, kept getting louder. Something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong until his friend called me. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because Tuesdays were my son's playgroup day, and I'd just gotten home. He was napping in his room, exhausted from running around with other toddlers. I was making myself a cup of tea when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize but from our area code, so I answered. The voice on the other end was shaky, nervous. Is this, are you married to? And he said my husband's name. My stomach dropped before I even knew why. Yes, I said. Who is this? I'm his friend. From college. Look, I don't know how to say this, but you need to know. He's been lying to you. He got married 3 years ago to someone else. Well, he's been married to you. The world stopped. I mean that literally. Everything around me just froze. I could hear my son's white noise machine humming in the other room. I could hear cars passing outside. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. But none of it felt real. It was like I'd stepped outside of my own life and was watching it happen to someone else. What? It was the only word I could manage. He told me everything. How my husband had reconnected with a girl from college on social media about 4 years ago. How they'd started meeting up for coffee, then lunch, then dinner. How he'd told her that I didn't exist, or worse, that we were separated, getting divorced, that the marriage had been over for years. How he'd actually married her in a ceremony 3 years ago. 3 years. My son wasn't even born yet when my husband was planning another wedding. When he was picking out rings and booking venues and saying vows to another woman. I asked how he knew all this. He said he'd been at the wedding. He'd believed the story about the divorce until recently, when he saw my husband's social media, saw pictures of me, of our son, dated after the second wedding. Pictures of family vacations and birthday parties and Christmas mornings. A whole life that contradicted everything my husband had told them. He said his conscience had been eating at him for months, and he couldn't stay silent anymore. That he kept thinking about me, this woman he'd never met, living a lie. That he had a wife and kids of his own, and the thought of someone doing this to them made him physically sick. I don't remember hanging up the phone. I don't remember the next few hours clearly at all. It's like my brain went into shock and just shut down everything that wasn't essential for survival. I checked on my son, still sleeping peacefully. I sat down on the couch. I stared at the wall. When my husband came home that night, I was sitting in the living room, waiting. Our son was already asleep. I'd been sitting there for 3 hours, just staring at the wall, trying to process what I'd learned, trying to reconcile the man I thought I knew with the stranger who'd apparently built an entire second life. Hey, he said, kissing the top of my head like he did every night. How was your day? How was my day? Who is she? I asked. He froze. I could feel his body go rigid behind me. Who's who? The woman you married 3 years ago. Your college friend. Who is she? I watched his face cycle through emotions, confusion, denial, panic, calculation. He was trying to figure out what I knew, how much he could still lie about. And that's when I realized that even in this moment, caught completely, he was still planning his next move. Still strategizing. Still lying. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. I laughed. Actually laughed. It was either that or scream. Your friend called me. He told me everything. He was at your wedding, to her. While you were married to me. He sat down, and I watched him try on different stories like trying on clothes. First, it was a misunderstanding. Then, it was something that had happened but was over now. Then, it was my fault somehow. I'd been distant after the baby. I didn't understand his needs. I'd changed. The lies kept coming one after another even as I sat there with the truth in my hands. He never admitted it. Not really. Even when I said I'd call her myself, even when I threatened to leave, he kept spinning stories. Kept denying. Kept manipulating. That's when I started digging into our finances. Our savings account, the one we'd built together for our son's future, for a bigger house, for security, was almost empty. The money I thought we had didn't exist. He'd been draining it for years, paying for 2 lives, 2 households, 2 sets of lies. Even our house was at risk. He'd taken out a second mortgage without telling me, used my forged signature on documents. Everything I thought was secure was actually balancing on a knife's edge. I called my lawyer the next day. The divorce was brutal. He fought me on everything: custody, money, property. The man who'd promised to love and protect me was now trying to destroy me legally and financially. And through it all, he maintained his lies. Told the lawyers I was crazy, that I'd made everything up, that his friend was lying. But the evidence was there. The marriage certificate, the photos, the financial records showing money flowing to her account, to an apartment I didn't know existed, to a whole life he'd built while sleeping in my bed every night. Now I'm 40. My son is 3 years old. And I'm angry. I'm not going to lie to you and say I've healed, or that I've found peace, or that everything happens for a reason. I haven't, and it doesn't. I'm still furious. I'm furious that he stole 7 years of my life. I'm furious that my son will grow up in a broken home because his father couldn't keep his vows. I'm furious that I trusted someone so completely and was so catastrophically wrong. But I'm also awake now. I see the red flags I missed. The late nights. The secretive phone behavior. The way he'd get defensive when I asked simple questions. The times he'd accuse me of being paranoid or jealous. Classic manipulation to make me doubt my own instincts. If you're reading this, if you're watching this, and something in your gut is telling you that something's wrong, listen to it. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't let him convince you that you're crazy or paranoid or dramatic. Women's intuition isn't some mystical thing. It's your brain processing patterns and inconsistencies that you haven't consciously noticed yet. Trust it. I didn't, and it cost me everything I thought I had. My marriage was a lie. My financial security was a lie. Even the timeline of my own life was a lie. While I was celebrating anniversaries, he was maintaining a second marriage. I'm 40 years old, and I'm starting over. I'm rebuilding my savings account from zero. I'm explaining to my 3-year-old why Daddy doesn't live here anymore. I'm learning to trust myself again after trusting the wrong person so completely. And I'm angry. Still. Maybe I'll always be angry about this. But at least now I'm angry with my eyes open.